Which choice best states the main idea of the text? Several scholars have argued that conditions in England in the late 9th through early 11th centuries, namely burgeoning literacy amid running conflicts between England's Anglo-Saxon kingdoms and Danish invaders, were especially conducive to the production of the Old English epic poem Beowulf, and they've dated the poem's composition accordingly. It is not inconceivable that Beowulf emerged from such a context, but privileging contextual fit over the linguistic evidence of an 8th or even 7th century composition requires a level of justification that thus far has not been presented. So option choice A says, although there are some grounds for believing that Beowulf was composed between the late 9th and early 11th centuries, advocates for that view tend to rely on evidence that has been called into question by advocates for an earlier date. This is incorrect because although the first part of this option choice is correct, where it says that there are grounds for believing Beowulf was composed in between late 9th and early 11th centuries, the second part is incorrect, where it says that advocates for that view tend to rely on evidence that has been called into question by advocates for an earlier date, because this is not the case. In the text, it highlights how the historical situation during the 9th and early 11th centuries fit the production of Beowulf during this period. There's other evidence, specifically linguistic evidence, that supports an 8th or even 7th century composition. And because of this evidence, the justification for the 9th to 11th century has not been presented. Therefore, A is incorrect. B. Although several scholars have dated Beowulf to the late 9th through early 11th centuries, others have argued that doing so privileges a controversial interpretation of the social conditions of the period. This is incorrect because the text doesn't discuss the social conditions of the late 9th through early 11th centuries, nor does it highlight how others have argued that doing so privileges a controversial interpretation of the social conditions during the period. Therefore, B is incorrect. C. Although Beowulf fits well with the historical context of England in the late 9th through early 11th centuries, it fits equally well with the historical context of England in the 7th and 8th centuries. This is incorrect because although the first part is true, where the text clearly states that the production of Beowulf was that the historical conditions during the late 9th and early 11th century was conducive to the production of the poem Beowulf, which means that the historical context of England in the late 9th through early 11th centuries fits well with the production of Beowulf. It never says that it fits equally well with the historical context of England in the 7th and 8th centuries. So C is incorrect. D. Although the claim of a late 9th through early 11th century composition date for Beowulf has some plausibility, advocates for the claim have not compellingly addressed evidence suggesting an earlier date. So this is the correct answer because it properly addresses all parts of the text, where the first part of the option clearly highlights how the historical context in the late 9th through early 11th centuries was conducive to the creation of Beowulf. It also highlights the point where it says that linguistic evidence for an 8th or even 7th century composition requires a level of justification that thus far has not been presented. Therefore, the correct answer is D.